Hello. Today we're going to talk about probabilities when outcomes are equally likely. Our math message today is which phrase, extremely likely, 50-50 chance, or very unlikely, best describes the chance of picking a red card from a regular deck of playing cards. And the answer to this question would be a 50-50 chance. And the reason that would be our answer is because half of the cards in a deck are red and half of them are black. So we would have a 50-50 chance or an even chance of picking a red card. Next, I'd like to talk to you about some terms that you may have seen or heard before, and you're going to hear these words a lot when we talk about probability. And you can see we have extremely likely, impossible, 50-50 even, unlikely, extremely likely, likely, very unlikely, certain, and very likely. So all of these terms give us an idea of the probability of something that would happen. So the reason that I have a deck of cards placed at the bottom of the screen is just to kind of give you an idea. When we look at a deck of cards, we have 52 cards in a deck. And like I said earlier, half of the cards are red and half of them are black. They also have different suits on, and I'm not talking about the kind that you wear, boys, when you dress up with a tie. I'm talking about the pictures on the card itself. So we have something called Spades, which is the heart that looks like it has a stick on the bottom of it. We have clubs that kind of looks like a clover. We have hearts, we have diamonds. So all of those would be a suit. And within each suit, we have 4 cards, one of each kind. So for example, if there are 4 fours in a deck of cards, and each 4 has a different suit on the card itself, and you would have 2 black, 2 red. So just to give you an idea there, because that's going to hopefully help you with your work in the classroom in your SMJ. So let's take a look at some vocabulary that we have with this lesson. You're going to hear the word outcome. An outcome basically means the results, like what happened. Event, a specific set or collection of possible outcomes. Probability, which is what the title of our lesson has in it today, a number from 0 to 1 that tells the chance that an event will happen. Favorable outcome, an event that will most likely happen. So hopefully this will start to make sense as we start to look at some of the questions that you are being asked. So I'm going to show you a formula here. Probability of an event is equal to the number of favorable outcomes over the number of possible outcomes. So I want you to think about that formula as you are trying to answer questions about decks of cards and probabilities of different kinds of things happening. So for example, if I asked you what the probability of picking a heart would be from a deck of cards, think about how many hearts are in a deck of cards. What might that be? Would it be an event that would most likely happen? Would it be an event that is unlikely? Would it be an event that's certain? So when we think about those kinds of things, an event that would be certain would mean that you're definitely going to have that happen no matter what. So for that to happen, that would mean that my entire deck of cards would be hearts if I said that that was certain that that was going to happen. But since we don't have the entire deck full of hearts, there are only 4 hearts in a deck of cards. So the likelihood of that happening, since there are only 4 possible hearts that I could pick, and there are 52 cards, we would probably say that that event is unlikely. That would happen. Okay? Now, what would the likelihood be for me picking a face card? So think for a minute, how many face cards are in a deck? And when we say face card, we're talking about a king, a queen, or a jack. Think about how many face cards are in a deck. Well, I have 4 of each suit, right? I would have 4 of each suit. So what would that be? It's probably going to be less likely that I'm going to pick a face card because there are a certain number of face cards in the deck, but there are more cards that are not face cards in the deck. Okay, so we could continue to ask questions like, what are the chances of picking a black card? And that would be 50-50 or an equal chance, because remember I said at the beginning there are half black and half red cards in a deck of 52. So there's an equal chance of picking one of those. If I asked a question like, what is the probability of picking a card that is not the ace of spades? So if you think about that, there's only one card in the deck that is the ace of spades. So that means 51 of the other cards are not. So that particular probability phrase would be extremely likely, because there are 51 other cards that are not an ace of spades, and there are 52 possible cards in the deck. So, let's think about another one. What if I asked you the probability of picking the 46 of diamonds? 46 of diamonds. Well, that would be impossible because there is no 46 of diamonds in a deck of cards. So you kind of see where I'm going here. All right, so basically, when we go to report probability, you're going to hear the phrases like I just talked about. The unlikely, the less likely, and the such that I talked about on the other screen. There's also a different way of reporting where we could write fractions of the likelihood of drawing a certain card from a deck. Or if we put the deck in a brown paper bag and pulled out cards, what would we get? So if we did something like that, and I asked you, what is the probability of picking a heart? When you think about it, there is a heart on a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, a 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, jack, queen, king, or ace of hearts. So that means that there are 13 cards in that deck that could be a heart. So the probability, or the fraction that I could write for that, there are 13 out of 52 cards that would be a heart. So my fraction would be 13/52 is how we would say that. So as you can see, my numerator is the number of favorable outcomes because there are 13 of those cards. And my denominator is the number of possible outcomes because there's a total of 52 cards. If I asked you the probability of picking a face card, like a Jack, King, Queen, Ace kind of, or Ace is not a face card, excuse me. But if I asked you about picking one of those, there are 12 of those cards in a deck. So my fraction would be 12/52 because again, the number of cards in the deck has not changed. There's still 52. We're just looking at the number of favorable outcomes. If I asked you, what are my chances or what's the probability of picking a club? Now remember, that's kind of the one that looks like a clover. There are 13 of those cards as well. So you're going to use a deck of cards in class and you're going to work with a partner and you're going to kind of try to figure out some of these things. And if you're not very familiar with a deck of cards, you might need to actually look and count. But those of you that are familiar, you might have a little bit easier time using the cards. So to summarize, we reviewed a lot of terms related to probability. We looked at and used a formula for reporting probability, and we saw that we can report probability in phrases like likely or unlikely or certain, and we can also write it as a fraction. Thank you for watching.